the whispers in the walls. In the quaint town of Blackwood, nestled in the shadow of the northern pines, stood an ancient Victorian house known as Hollowstead Manor. Abandoned for decades, the house was the subject of endless rumors. Locals spoke of strange sounds, ghostly apparitions, and a sinister presence that made the air feel heavy. Children dared one another to step onto its porch but never stayed long enough to enter. When Clara Winters inherited the property from a distant relative she had never met, she dismissed the tales as small-town superstition. As a freelance writer, she craved solitude, and the sprawling estate seemed the perfect place to finish her long-overdue novel. Despite the warnings, she packed her car and drove to Blackwood. Arrival at Hollowstead. Clara arrived just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the house in an eerie glow. The once grand facade was weathered, the paint peeling, and the shutters hanging at odd angles. Yet, the structure still stood proud, as if defying time itself. Unlocking the heavy oak door, she stepped inside. The air was stale, carrying the faint scent of mildew. Dust coated every surface, and cobwebs draped from the chandelier like delicate lace. Despite its disrepair, the house had a certain charm that Clara found oddly comforting. She spent the first night unpacking and settling into the study, a grand room lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. The fireplace crackled warmly, and the creak of the old wooden floors beneath her feet felt almost like the house welcoming her. But as the night deepened, an unsettling sound reached her ears. Faint, rhythmic tapping. It came from the walls, so soft it could almost be mistaken for the settling of the old house. Clara shrugged it off as normal, her exhaustion winning over curiosity. The first night, at precisely 3:03 a.m., Clara awoke to whispers. At first, she thought it was the wind slipping through the cracks in the windows. But the sound grew louder, distinct, as if multiple voices were murmuring just beyond her bedroom walls. Their words were incomprehensible, yet they carried a tone of urgency and malice. Heart pounding, Clara grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight. The whispers ceased the moment the light hit the room, plunging it into an oppressive silence. She scanned the walls, half expecting to see something staring back at her. But there was nothing. Determined not to let her imagination get the best of her, she forced herself back to sleep. The locked door. The next day, Clara explored the house, hoping to uncover its secrets. Most of the rooms were empty, save for a few pieces of furniture shrouded in dusty sheets. But on the third floor, she encountered a door that refused to budge. The lock was old and rusted, and no amount of force could open it. As Clara pressed her ear to the wood, she thought she heard a faint shuffling sound from the other side, as if something, or someone, was moving within. "I'll deal with it later," she muttered, but the door lingered in her mind, a puzzle begging to be solved. The writing on the walls. That evening, Clara settled into her study to write. The words came easily, flowing as if someone were dictating them to her. Hours passed before she realized she hadn't stopped typing once, not even to think. When she finally looked at the screen, her stomach churned. The words weren't hers. They described a gruesome scene. A woman trapped in a dark room, scratching at the walls until her nails bled, screaming for someone to hear her. Clara's hands trembled as she scrolled up, desperate to find where her writing had shifted. But every page was the same, filled with details she had no memory of typing. A sudden crash upstairs made her jump. The sound came from the direction of the locked door. The unseen presence. Armed with a flashlight and a crowbar, Clara climbed to the third floor. The hallway felt colder than before, the air heavy with an unshakable sense of dread. As she approached the locked door, she noticed something new. Scratches etched deep into the wood, as if by desperate fingernails. With shaking hands, she pried the door open. The room beyond was small, more of a crawl space than a proper room. The walls were covered in strange symbols, carved deep into the wood. In the center of the floor was a circle of melted candles, their wax long hardened. The air was thick with the scent of decay. But what truly chilled Clara was the journal lying in the center of the circle. She picked it up and flipped through its pages. Each entry was written by a different hand, detailing how they had heard whispers in the walls, how they had been drawn to the locked room, how the house wouldn't let them leave. The final entry was scrawled in a frantic, uneven script. The house feeds on us. It whispers until we break. I can hear it now calling my name. There's no escape. If you're reading this, you're already too late. The descent. From that moment, the house grew more oppressive. The whispers became louder, more insistent, echoing throughout the halls even during the day. Shadows flickered in her peripheral vision, and objects moved when she wasn't looking. Clara tried to leave, but every time she stepped outside, she found herself back in the house, standing at the foot of the grand staircase. The house had ensnared her, just as it had the others before her. Desperation clawed at her mind. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping. Her days blurred together in a haze of paranoia and fear. The only solace she found was in writing, though the words were no longer her own. One night, as the clock struck 3:03 a.m., Clara felt compelled to return to the locked room. The whispers guided her, their tone almost soothing now, like a lullaby. She stepped into the circle of candles and sat down, the journal in her lap. The whispers grew deafening, surrounding her, filling her mind until she could think of nothing else. And then, just as suddenly as they began, they stopped. In the silence, Clara felt a presence behind her. She turned, and for the first time, she saw the house for what it truly was. A living, breathing entity, its walls pulsing like flesh, its windows glinting like hungry eyes. The last thing she heard was her own scream, echoing through the empty halls. The new owner. Weeks later, a real estate agent arrived at Hollowstead Manor to prepare it for sale. She noted the odd chill in the air and the strange scratches on the walls, but she dismissed them. As she cataloged the property, she felt a peculiar pull toward the study. Sitting on the desk was an unfinished manuscript. Curious, she picked it up and began to read. The story described a young woman named Clara and the horrors she faced in the house. But the final chapter was blank, waiting to be completed. The agent smiled. "Maybe I'll stay here for a while," she murmured, the whispers already beginning to stir in the walls.